Harvey Andrews slammed the hood of his rusted-out pickup shut, sweat beading across his forehead as the Texas sun beat down without mercy. "Come on," he muttered, glancing at the dashboard clock. "We're gonna be late, buddy." In the backseat, his 5-year-old son Nolan yawned, hugging his worn-out teddy bear. "Is Miss Paula gonna be mad again?" Harvey exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Not if we get moving now." He climbed behind the wheel, turned the key, and the engine coughed to life with a groan. The truck was on its last leg, just like Harvey. Between juggling double shifts at the auto shop and barely scraping together rent for their tiny 2-bedroom duplex, there wasn't much left in him to give. They were halfway down a back road shortcut when he slammed the brakes, tires screeching. There, lying in the middle of the road, was a woman. Harvey's heart punched his ribs. He jumped out, yelling, "Hey, ma'am." She didn't move. Nolan stayed in the truck, wide-eyed, watching as Harvey dropped to his knees beside her. Her long, dark hair was tangled around her face, and there was a small scrape on her temple. She was breathing shallow but steady. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked, gently brushing the hair from her face. She stirred, groaning faintly, her lips parted. "Where am I? You're safe, all right. You passed out in the middle of the road." "I'm gonna get you help." "No hospitals," she rasped, eyes fluttering open. They were the deepest shade of green he'd ever seen. There was panic behind them. Harvey frowned. "You sure you hit your head?" "No hospitals," she said again, firmer this time. "Please?" Harvey hesitated. Every instinct told him to call for help, but there was something in her eyes, a quiet desperation that made him pause. "All right," he said after a beat. "But I'm not leaving you here. Can you stand?" She nodded weakly. Harvey helped her up, wrapping an arm around her waist as she leaned heavily on him. She was barefoot, her dress dusty and torn at the hem. She looked like she'd fallen out of a magazine photo shoot and landed straight into a ditch. He opened the passenger door. "Nolan, scoot over." His son did, big eyes darting between them. "Is she okay?" "She will be," Harvey said, guiding the woman into the truck. "Right." She gave a tiny nod. They drove in silence. Harvey kept glancing at her. She looked out the window like she didn't recognize anything around her. Her hands trembled in her lap. At the duplex, Harvey helped her inside. It wasn't much peeling paint, secondhand furniture, but it was home. "I'm Harvey," he said, setting a glass of water in front of her. "And that's Nolan." She finally looked at him with more clarity. "Raya," she said quietly. "Raya Lennox." "All right, Raya, you want to tell me what happened back there?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't remember, just running, then everything went black." "Running from what?" he asked. Again, she didn't answer. Harvey didn't push. "You can stay here till you figure things out. Couch isn't comfortable, but it's better than the road." Raya blinked, surprised. "You don't know me. Why would you help me?" He shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. She stared at him like no one had ever said that to her before. Later that night, after Nolan was asleep, Harvey returned to the living room. Raya sat curled under a blanket, her head resting on the back of the couch. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "Thank you for today." He sat across from her. "You got someone you can call?" "Family? No," she said after a pause. "No one." Harvey rubbed the back of his neck. "You don't have to tell me everything, just, I got a kid. I'm not going to bring trouble into his world." "I understand," she said softly. "I promise I'm not trouble." He believed her. Even if every bit of logic told him this was crazy, something in his gut said she was telling the truth. Over the next few days, Raya slowly came back to life. She helped with dishes, read bedtime stories to Nolan, and even managed to fix Harvey's busted coffee maker. "This thing's older than me," she teased one morning. "Don't insult the only thing that keeps me awake," he shot back with a grin. She laughed, and he smiled without meaning to. It was easy being around her. Too easy. He caught himself watching her when she wasn't looking, how she crinkled her nose when she concentrated, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. She was elegant, but not in a way that felt fake. There was something polished under her surface, like she didn't belong in a place like this, and he couldn't lie, he felt it. The pull, one night after Nolan had gone to bed, they sat on the porch, the air thick with summer heat. "I feel like I've known you longer than a week," she said, staring up at the stars. "Me too," Harvey admitted. She turned to him. "Why are you still here? In this town, I mean," he chuckled. "I got Nolan. After his mom left, I couldn't exactly pick up and go." This town's not much, but it's all I got. A shadow crossed her face. It's more than I have. He looked at her then, really looked. You sure about that? She didn't answer, but her eyes lingered on his face longer than usual. That night, Harvey lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He was falling. And fast. But he didn't know who she really was, and neither did she. Raya watched from the cracked living room window as Harvey wrestled a wheelbarrow full of tools across the patchy front yard. His shirt clung to his back, soaked from a long day at the shop, and the sun had already dipped low enough to turn the sky a soft orange. She'd never seen a man look so tired, or so steady. He didn't see her watching. After a moment, she stepped away from the window, her mind tugged in two directions. One part of her wanted to stay invisible. The other part, smaller but louder, wanted to be known. She found him on the porch, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better days. I could make dinner tonight, she said, folding her arms lightly over her ribs. He glanced up. You cook, I can follow directions, she said, and Nolan deserves something that doesn't come from a microwave. His mouth tilted slightly. You're sure you're up for that? If I burn it, I'll take full responsibility. Fair. Inside, she opened the nearly empty fridge and studied her options. A half-dozen eggs, a block of cheddar, and some limp spinach. She found a bag of potatoes under the sink and set to work. Harvey leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her slice and stir like she belonged there. You always this handy in someone else's kitchen? He asked. Only when I owe them, she said, not looking up. You don't owe me anything, he replied, voice even. She paused mid-stir. That's not how I was raised. He didn't follow up, but she could feel his attention sharpen. She changed the subject before the silence turned into questions. Nolan bounded in moments later, cheeks pink from playing outside. It smells better than Dad's food, Harvey pointed a spatula at him. Hey now. They ate together at the small kitchen table, knees bumping under the wood. It was the first time Raya had felt something close to normal in days. After Nolan went to bed, Harvey lingered in the kitchen, rinsing dishes while she dried. You don't talk much about yourself, he said finally. She kept her eyes on the dish towel. Maybe I don't know who I am right now. He didn't laugh or question it. That happened before. No, she said quietly, but I think it was coming for a long time. He dried his hands. You ever think maybe you don't want to go back to whoever you were before? She looked up. Every minute, he held her gaze, something shifting behind his expression. The next morning, Raya woke early and wandered through the yard, arms wrapped around herself. The air was cool, the sky cloudless. Across the road, an old man was walking his dog. He tipped his hat to her. She returned the gesture. She still hadn't told Harvey anything real. Not about the life she'd left behind. Not about how her last name Lennox was tied to one of the largest private investment firms in the country. Not about how her father had disowned her the moment she refused to marry the man he'd chosen for her. Not about the black car that had chased her down the country road just before she collapsed. She wasn't ready, but she was starting to want to be. That afternoon, Harvey picked Nolan up from school, and when they got back, there was a woman waiting by the mailbox. She was tall, with sharp eyes and a clipboard in hand. I'm from the landlord's office, she said crisply. You're Harvey Andrews. That's me, he said, setting Nolan down. We received notice of late rent for the second month in a row. If it's not settled by the end of the week, we'll move forward with the next steps. Harvey nodded stiffly. Got it. The woman didn't wait for a response. She left as quickly as she came. Raya had stepped outside in time to hear the last part. She watched Harvey kneel to tie Nolan's shoelace, his jaw tight. Why didn't you tell me? She asked when Nolan ran inside. Tell you what, he said without looking up. That you're behind on rent. He stood, brushing off his hands. Didn't think it was your problem. It is, she said. I've been living here too. He looked at her then, and something unspoken passed between them. I'm not taking money from you, Raya, he said. I didn't offer, she replied. But maybe I could help in other ways. He crossed his arms. Such as, she hesitated. What if I helped you at the shop? I've got a good head for numbers and I can talk to people, he blinked. You want to work at the garage. I want to do something that makes me feel useful. He looked at her like he was trying to fit her into a box she clearly didn't belong in. You sure? No, she said with a faint smile. But let's try it anyway. The The next day, Harvey introduced her to the owner of the shop, a quiet man named Lou who eyed Raya's clean clothes and soft hands with suspicion. "She's a friend," Harvey said. "She's helping out for a bit." Lou grunted and went back to sorting invoices. Raya spent the morning organizing the cluttered front desk, answering calls and inputting work orders. By noon, she'd already caught 2 billing errors and negotiated better pricing with a parts supplier. "You don't miss a thing, do you?" Harvey said, watching her work. "I had to learn early," she replied, not elaborating. "Where'd you work before?" She thought for a moment. "A place that didn't appreciate me," he nodded. "Their loss." As the sun dipped low again, they locked up the shop and walked to the truck. Harvey opened the passenger door for her without thinking. She hesitated before climbing in. "You know," she said, "you never ask me the real questions." He leaned on the door. "I figure you'll tell me when you're ready." She got in, watching him circle around to the driver's side, his profile lit by the fading light. "I want to be," she said quietly. He glanced at her. "What?" "Ready," she said. "To tell you." He didn't press her. Just started the engine and drove them home. But in her lap, her fingers curled tightly around a folded slip of paper she'd pulled from the bottom of her bag that morning. A bank account number. And a name. The man her father had tried to force her to marry, the one who owned that black car. He'd found her once, and now he knew where she was. The next morning began with low clouds and a gray hush over the town. Harvey pulled on his boots slowly, eyes flicking to the living room where Raya sat on the floor helping Nalan build a paper rocket. Her knees were tucked up, a pencil behind her ear, and she was laughing, really laughing for the first time since she'd arrived. He stepped outside, letting the screen door creak shut behind him. He needed air and to clear the knot tightening in his gut since the moment he saw that slip of paper in her hands the night before. She hadn't said anything about it, but her eyes had changed, gone distant, guarded. At the shop, he worked in silence, cutting through metal and smoke until Lou handed him a clipboard with a raised brow. "You're behind again," Lou said. "Suppliers are calling. I can't float the difference much longer." Harvey stared at the numbers. "I'll figure it out. You always say that." Harvey wiped his brow with the back of his wrist and said nothing more. Back at the house, Raya stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom, her hands pressed flat against the sink. Her hair was pulled away from her face, and for the first time in weeks, she looked like herself, at least on the surface. But everything inside her felt unstable. She opened the drawer Harvey had cleared for her and pulled out the folded slip of paper. The name printed beneath the account number was crisp, untouched. Graham Halden. She hadn't heard his voice since the night she disappeared, but she could still remember the way it curled like smoke whenever he said her name. She tore the paper in half, then into quarters. Then smaller until she couldn't read a single letter. When Harvey came home, she met him at the door before he could say a word. "I need to tell you something," she said. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "All right. I wasn't honest with you. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I didn't know if I was safe." His jaw shifted, but he didn't interrupt. "My full name is Maria Lennox. My father is Jasper Lennox. He owns Lennox Holdings. It's a private equity firm based out of Chicago." Harvey's brows drew together. "The Lennox," she nodded once. "I walked away from all of it. The company, the name, the man I was supposed to marry. I couldn't stomach the thought of being bought and sold like a business merger." Harvey leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "And he let you walk?" "No." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "He sent Graham after me. That's who I was running from." He stared at her, something unreadable flickering across his face. She stepped closer. "I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to be anything without control and money dictating every part of my life. Then I woke up on your couch." Harvey rubbed his face. "So what happens now?" "I don't want to go back," she said. "But I can't pretend the past doesn't exist." He looked at her for a long moment before finally speaking. "Why'd you destroy the paper?" She blinked. "You saw it." "Yeah, because I don't want to live my life by a number anymore." He nodded slowly, then turned toward the kitchen. "You hungry?" She let out a breath. "You're not going to yell at me." He opened the fridge and pulled out 2 eggs. "Not yet." Later that night, after Nalan had gone to sleep, they sat outside with 2 chipped mugs of weak coffee. The air smelled faintly of rain. "You ever miss it?" he asked, not looking at her. I used to. Now I miss the idea of it more than the reality. I had everything, but I never felt like I was mine. He tapped the rim of his mug. You are now. She tilted her head toward him. You should let me help you. I already told you I'm not taking money from you. I wasn't offering money, she said. I was offering strategy. You've got a loyal customer base but no online presence. You're undercharging for labor. And you're still using an invoicing system from 2 decades ago. He blinked. You've been here 2 weeks, I read fast. He laughed, short and low. Fine, you want to overhaul the business, be my guest. But I'm warning you, it's not glamorous. I think I've had enough glamour to last a lifetime. The next morning, she was already at the shop before Harvey arrived. She'd pulled her hair back, rolled up the sleeves of an old flannel she found in the closet, and opened a laptop she'd borrowed from the public library. By midday, she'd built a basic website, updated contact information, and created a scheduling form. She even convinced Lou to let her rearrange the reception area. Harvey watched her from under the hood of a truck. There was something surreal about seeing her here, her fingers flying across the keyboard with confidence, her voice steady as she pitched new ideas to 2 skeptical mechanics. She didn't belong in this world, but somehow she was changing it. And maybe, without meaning to, she was changing him too. That afternoon, a black SUV rolled slowly past the garage and parked half a block down. Harvey saw it first. Tinted windows, no plates. Raya came out of the office with a clipboard and followed his gaze. She stilled. That's him, she said. Harvey didn't respond. He tossed the wrench onto the workbench and wiped his hands. I'll handle it, he said. No, she said quickly. He wants a scene. He feeds off of control. Harvey's eyes narrowed. And he doesn't get to control anything here. Raya stepped in front of him. If you go out there like that, he wins. Let me talk to him. He looked at her, torn between fury and something deeper. You sure? She nodded, but I need you close. Just in case. She walked down the block, slow and deliberate, until the passenger window rolled down. Graham Halden leaned out, hair slicked back, a smile pulling at his mouth. There you are. I told you to stay away. He laughed, low and amused. You didn't think I'd actually listen, did you? I'm not coming back. Your father disagrees. I don't care, he leaned forward. You think this little town is going to protect you? That man, he can't even pay his rent. Raya's jaw tightened. You're right. He can't. Graham raised his brows. But he doesn't need to, because I'm not his problem to solve. I'm not anyone's property, and I'm not afraid of you anymore. She turned around and walked back without waiting for a response. Behind her, the SUV idled for a beat, then pulled away. Harvey met her halfway. You okay? She nodded, though her hands trembled. He reached out and took them in his. You didn't need me. I always did, she said. Just not in the way I thought. Rain tapped gently against the windows as dusk settled over the house. Inside, warm light bathed the kitchen where Raya stood barefoot, carefully slicing strawberries while Nolan chattered beside her. Harvey leaned in the doorway, arms folded, watching them with a quiet stillness he couldn't explain. Something had shifted since the confrontation with Graham. Not just in Raya, but in him. I'm making dessert, Nolan announced, his hands sticky with sugar. More like eating dessert as we go, Raya teased without looking up. Harvey stepped forward and ruffled his son's hair. Wash your hands, champ. We'll eat in 5. As Nolan ran off, Raya turned, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. I need to ask you something, she said. Harvey's brow lifted. All right. She set the knife down and wiped her hands on a towel. What would you do if you suddenly had the resources to change everything? Not just patch holes, but completely rebuild, he blinked. You mean the shop, I mean your life. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved to the window and looked out at the yard where the grass grew in uneven patches. I'd pay off Lou. Give Nolan more than secondhand toys, maybe buy a place we don't have to worry about losing every month. When he turned back, she was watching him, her gaze steady. You can, she said. He frowned. Raya, I've already done it, she said gently. I set up a trust in Nolan's name this morning, not for you, for him. It's not charity, it's what I want. Harvey's jaw tensed. You should have talked to me, I know, she said. But I also know you would have said no. He walked past her and leaned on the counter, face tight. You think I'm proud of where I am, that I like working 16-hour days just to keep the lights on? No, she said. I think you've been surviving so long you forgot what it feels like to live. He didn't speak. I'm not trying to fix you, she added. I'm trying to build something with you. He looked at her then, something raw and unguarded flashing across his eyes. You really think there's a with, Raya? You're not staying. You've got a whole life waiting somewhere else. She moved closer. I had a life, but I didn't start living until I met you, he shook his head. You don't belong here. I belong wherever you are. The silence that followed was thick. Then from down the hall, Nolan called out, Dad, you coming? Harvey let out a breath, eyes still on her. Yeah, buddy, be right there. They ate dinner without talking about money or last names. Nolan told a long-winded story about a paper airplane that got stuck in a tree, and Raya laughed until she was gasping. Afterward, Harvey walked her to the porch where the rain had finally stopped. The street glistened under the lamplight, and the air smelled of damp earth and something new. I've been thinking about what you said, he began. Raya glanced at him. About what? About building something. I don't want a handout, but I could use a partner. Her breath caught. Are you saying I'm saying, he interrupted, that I want you to stay, not as a guest, not in the shadows. I want you here with us. She was quiet for a moment. There's more, he waited. I transferred the balance of my personal account this afternoon. I closed every tie I had to Lennox Holdings. I'm not going back to that life. And if I stay, I want to invest in the garage, not just as a partner. As an owner, his eyes widened. You're serious. I already filed the paperwork. Lou's on board. Harvey's breath twisted in his chest. You did all that today, she stepped closer. You gave me safety when I had nothing. Let me give you stability so we can finally build something real. He laughed under his breath, more in disbelief than amusement. You're relentless, she smiled. You're worth it. He reached for her hand. So are you. She leaned into him, forehead resting against his. I love you, she whispered. I didn't know what it felt like until now. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. You're not the only one who fell. The next morning, the garage reopened under new signage, A&R Auto Solutions. Harvey stood beside Raya as customers trickled in, some surprised, others curious. Word was already spreading. Lou grunted his approval and went back to tinkering with a carburetor. Inside the office, Nolan sat behind the desk with a plastic steering wheel and declared himself the boss. Raya laughed and high-fived him before turning to Harvey. Think they're ready for us. He slung an arm around her shoulders and kissed the top of her head. Let's find out. Months passed. The shop thrived. Harvey no longer came home with tension in his shoulders. Raya took over client relations and bookkeeping while Harvey trained 2 more mechanics. Nolan got a new bike, a birthday party with real streamers, and the security of knowing home wasn't going anywhere. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Harvey stood in the yard holding a velvet box. Raya stepped out, wiping flour from her fingers. What's that? He opened it. Inside was a simple ring, rose gold with a tiny diamond that caught the light like fire. I don't have a jet or a private island, but I've got one hell of a backyard, he said. She laughed, then covered her mouth with a hand as tears sprang to her eyes. I can't promise wealth, but I can promise loyalty, strength, and love every day if that's enough for you. She kissed him before he could finish. It's everything. They got married under the big oak tree behind the house. Nolan wore a bow tie and handed over the rings like a pro. Lou brought barbecue, and the entire town showed up with folding chairs and homemade pies. No one cared that she used to be a Lennox. Because now she was a part of something better. She was Raya Andrews. And finally, she was home. Raya adjusted the cuff of her blouse as she stepped into the newly renovated office at the garage. The once cramped space had been transformed with soft lighting, polished wood counters, and a corner nook where Nolan's books and crayons lived. She walked across the room, her heels clicking softly on the tile, and paused at the window overlooking the shop floor. Harvey stood beneath a lifted car, giving instructions to a new apprentice. His voice carried up through the open window low, even, confident. She watched him for a moment longer, then turned at the sound of the front door swinging open. A woman in a tailored navy coat entered, her expression unreadable beneath a pair of oversized sunglasses. May I help you? Raya asked. The woman removed her glasses and tucked them into her purse with slow precision. You're a difficult woman to track down, Maria. Raya's spine straightened. That's not my name anymore. I'm aware, the woman said, stepping closer. I'm not here on behalf of your father. I cut ties with Lennox Holdings 6 months ago. Then why are you here? The woman set a slim envelope on the counter. Because I thought you should know. Your father sold his majority stake 3 weeks ago. He left the country the next day. He won't be coming after you again. Raya didn't move. Why tell me? Because I was the one who helped him draft the trust that tied you to Graham. And I was also the one who dissolved it. Raya narrowed her eyes. What changed? Watching someone walk away from everything to find peace, it made me question what I was still clinging to. The woman offered a faint smile. Freedom is contagious. Raya looked down at the envelope but didn't touch it. I don't need anything from him. I believe you, but sometimes it's not about what we need, it's about what we deserve. She nodded once. Take care of yourself, Raya. After the woman left, Raya stood in silence for a long moment before finally opening the envelope. Inside was a single document. Her former name, was listed as the sole beneficiary of a final fund, one left unclaimed during the dissolution of Lennox Holdings. She stared at it, then folded it again and set it in the drawer untouched. She walked out onto the shop floor. Harvey looked up, wiping his hands on a clean rag. You all right? That was a ghost, she said, but I think it's gone now. He set the rag down. You sure? I'm sure. She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers. I want to talk about something else. Yeah, I've been thinking, she said, leading him toward the back office. About the house. Nolan's room is too small for his books, and I want to plant a garden that doesn't share a fence with someone's grill. He tilted his head. You want to move? I want to build, she said, voice soft but certain, from the ground up. A place that's ours in every way. He was quiet for a beat. Where? There's a plot outside of town. It's got a view of the hills and enough space for Nolan to ride his bike without dodging potholes. You already looked. I already bought it. Harvey blinked. You what? I wanted it to be a surprise, she said, squeezing his hand. But I also wanted you to know it's not just mine. It's ours. I put your name on the deed. He stared at her, his throat moving as he swallowed. You didn't have to. I know I didn't, she said gently. That's why I did. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. You terrify me, you know that? Good, she whispered. That means this is real. That night, they sat on the porch of the duplex one last time. Nolan curled up between them, sleep tugging at his eyelids as fireflies blinked in the yard. Raya rested her head on Harvey's shoulder, her fingers tracing the edge of his shirt. Do you remember the first night I stayed here? She asked softly. I remember thinking you were too polished to be real. I remember thinking you were too good to be true. He kissed her temple. Turns out we were both right. A few weeks later, the foundation was poured on the new property. Harvey spent weekends working with local builders, learning how to frame walls and lay insulation. Raya coordinated the design with soft earth tones, wide windows, and a wraparound porch. Nolan picked out the blue paint for his room and insisted on a telescope for the corner by the window. As the house came together, so did everything else. The garage expanded, adding 2 more bays and a waiting area with real coffee instead of the burnt stuff from the old machine. Raya launched a quarterly workshop for local teens interested in mechanics. Harvey trained anyone willing to learn, never charging a cent for the first 6 months. One morning, as mist clung to the hills and sunlight spilled across the lawn, Raya stood barefoot in the kitchen, humming as she poured orange juice. Harvey walked in, shirtless and drowsy, wrapping an arm around her waist. Do you realize we live here? He murmured against her neck. She leaned back into him. Every day. Nolan burst into the room seconds later, dragging a backpack and a cereal box, already talking about an upcoming school project on solar systems. Harvey chuckled, ruffling his hair. Let's get you fed before you turn into a black hole. Later that evening, after Nolan was asleep and the house was quiet, Harvey took Raya's hand and led her outside. I've been waiting for the right moment, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Her eyes widened. You already proposed. This isn't a proposal. He opened the box to reveal a slender gold necklace with a charm shaped like a crescent moon. It's a promise. She touched it gently. To what? To never forget how we got here, to always choose you even on the hard days. To keep building no matter what. She stepped into his arms, her cheek against his chest. Then I promised the same. The stars stretched out above them, quiet and endless, and somewhere in the distance, the soft hum of the wind passed through the trees. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in warmth and the certainty that this life, this love, this family was no longer borrowed, broken, or hidden. It was theirs. Forever.